views and opinions expressed do not necessarily reflect those of Access Fort Wayne, the Allen County Public Library, or any other supporting groups. If you'd like to produce a show, call us at 260-421-1250.
Let me be your lighthouse so I can show you the way. Let me be your shining light, I'll keep you from drifting away. I'm the one that makes you try when...
Think of the closest abortion business to you. Mine is right behind me. Now imagine if you could help shut down that very abortion business and make your community abortion-free. I'm Missy Martinez-Stone, CEO of Reprotection. We're a brand new pro-life watchdog group, and that's exactly what we help pro-life advocates like you do. We can help you develop a specific and effective strategy to close the doors of the abortion business nearest to you based on their own misdeeds. David B. Wright, founder of 40 Days for Life, says Reprotection is the missing link to the pro-life movement. You can help shut down the abortion business in your community, and we can help. Go to reprotection.org right now and find out how you can begin to take action in your community.
Hello, welcome to my show. This is Patty Hunter, and my show is called Patty's Page. Today's special guest on Zoom is Missy Martinez-Stone. She is the CEO of Reprotection. So I have questions for you. Well, who influenced you the most while you were growing up?
I don't know if it was a specific person more than it was my church and youth group experience. I was very involved in our church. We had a very, very active youth group. And I think those people, those friendships, and the pastors and that community probably influenced me the most.
And when did you become interested in pro-life issues? How old were you at that time?
Yeah, so growing up in the South, it was not something that was ever talked about.
Oh.
You know, I kind of grew up in that environment where you don't talk about controversial things, and it never came up. And so when I moved to Northern Virginia, right outside of DC, when I was 14, thankfully there were people who were part of national pro-life groups that were at our church and were very vocal about pro-life work and about the the atrocity that was abortion. And it immediately blew my mind that such a thing even existed. And so when I was, I think 15, I went to my first March for Life, and it changed my life. And I just thought, this is something that I want to be a part of. And I knew I was always going to be involved at some level in the pro-life world.
Mm-hmm. So how was your first experience for this March for Life?
Yeah, it was really impactful. I remember it so clearly to this day. I'm in my mid-30s now, and I can still remember, a 15-year-old walking up Constitution Avenue surrounded by hundreds of thousands of people. And I just had this really clarifying moment where I thought, this really matters. This really matters. And right then I just knew this is going to be what I do. But I think it was seeing the magnitude, of our nation's response, seeing hundreds of thousands of people show up and speak out. I realized this is so much bigger than what I realized. So I wanted to get back down to the Gulf Coast. So I was living in Northern Virginia at the time, but I missed the South. I missed home. And so I went back down to that area, and I went to the University of Southern Mississippi and got my degree in political science, with the intention of moving back to the DC area and doing pro-life work full time. At the time, I was thinking, oh, I'll go to law school, and either work in family law or help with adoption agencies. So I was trying to think, what is the most practical thing I could do to save lives? And, so I got my degree there, and actually wrote my honors thesis on the pro-life movement and how it's changed, how it had changed over the years. Gosh, I was talking about science, about how as science has gotten more advanced, how it's changed the conversation, that it's led more by women. Oh gosh, this was 10 years ago, so I can't remember all of it, but I was comparing it to the beginnings of the pro-life movement and what had shifted over time and why it had shifted. And so I was dedicated. Actually, I had a situation where I actually had a very pro-life professor. He was known for being kind of the sole conservative in the political science department. And we had a class on the Supreme Court, and we were learning how they argue cases, all the ins and outs of the Supreme Court. And so part of our curriculum was we had to do, mock presentations. We had to argue these cases. And he just randomly assigned us 2 cases. And I got assigned to Carhart versus Gonzalez, which is the case that argues for partial birth abortion. And I ended up in his office crying my eyes out. I said, I know this is make-believe and I'm not really arguing this, but I can't even pretend that I'm for partial birth abortion. And he was shocked. He had no idea that I was so pro-life. And he ended up being my advisor. And, but yeah, it's just something that I just stuck with in college and was always really passionate about.
So your first job, when did you, what was it? I mean, did you go into a pro-life organization, or before that, what did you do?
Yeah, so I graduated in August of 2012. I graduated in the summer, finished a little earlier, and moved back up to the DC area, and started with Students for Life of America in January of 2013. So at the time, they were very small. I think there were 10 employees, and they were only in colleges. And the idea was we need to take what we're doing on college campuses and translate it to high school. And so I went, sure, I can do that. At the time, I had realized, I didn't want to go to law school. And I was like, how else can I work in the pro-life movement? And this opportunity arose. And so I started with them and, built their entire high school program, which ended up pretty much outdoing their college program.
So what title and what duties did you perform throughout the time you were with them?
So I developed all of their high school programming. So how to start a club on high school campuses, what events to do, how to lead them. I was overseeing about 500 student groups. And yeah, because our field team was very, very small. Now they have like 40 people on their field team. Back then there was like 5 of us. So I was overseeing about 500 student groups, and helping with, activism on campus, educating and things like that. And then I was also doing a lot of their media, I was one of the national spokespeople.
So you were on TV and radio?
Yeah, yeah,
Wow.
yeah. Oh, all of the above. I mean, anytime we had a platform, I was one of the people doing the interviews, doing the education in front of the Supreme Court. Anytime there was a case, I was meeting with media to talk about what we were doing there. So like back then, like I said, we were so small. It was kind of like everybody did everything. So I had my main job of doing the field team, but then I took on some national responsibilities. And then after a year or two, I was promoted to the national field director and was overseeing the entire student program.
Wow.
And by the time I left, we had about 17 regional coordinators and had surpassed 1,000 groups. So it was a little busy.
Proud of you, girl.
Yeah, it was an amazing experience. And to this day, we're still very close friends. We work really closely with Students for Life. I'm still very close with Kristen Hawkins. But my time there was up, and I needed to
Move on.
rest.
Crisis Woman Center. What is that?
Yeah. So that was a pregnancy center where I lived in Northern Virginia. And they were in a really unique position because in Fredericksburg, there are no abortion facilities, but they go either to Washington, D.C., or they go to Richmond, which were both within an hour. But there is a major university there, and that's majority women. And so they needed help with their student outreach. And since that was what I did, for Students for Life for a number of years, I came on their board to help with student outreach and get a more inviting and, bigger presence on the university there, and even in the high schools. When
did you become involved with Reprotection, and how did you meet Kathy?
Yeah, so this is such an interesting story. So I had taken some time after working at Students for Life. I took a sabbatical. I was having some health issues that needed to be addressed. And so my husband and I were really discerning about, what our next steps were. I know I wanted to get back into pro-life work, but I didn't want to be traveling all the time, and it needed to be something that was a little more conducive to our situation. And we were praying, and we actually had just did a 2-week fast and really trying to figure out what our next steps were going to be. We wanted to leave the Northern Virginia area. It was just too busy, and it's so expensive, and we just knew we didn't want to live there long term. So we had decided that we were going to move to Louisville, Kentucky. And we were just believing that the right jobs were going to come along. And so I had a meeting with David B. Wright, founder of 40 Days for Life. Him and I have worked together for years. He's one of my closest friends in the pro-life movement. We were actually meeting about the pregnancy, about choices.
David B. Wright.
Yes. Yeah.
Wow, I interviewed him too.
Yeah, he's wonderful. One of my closest friends in the pro-life movement. And the choices board wanted me to ask him some questions. So we grabbed lunch, and I mentioned something about moving to Louisville, and he kind of got this funny look on his face. And he was like, let's circle back to that. And so we, go back to him like, oh, you want to know why are we moving to Louisville? And he said, no, I want to tell you what I have going on in Louisville. I said, what do you have going on in Louisville? And it turns out that him and Kathy had been meeting. They had some people that these planning meetings where they were trying to figure out how to take what Kathy had done in Indiana,
right,
and apply it to other abortion facilities. So she had closed those 3 facilities in Indiana with Ulrich Klopfer, and they had picked Louisville as the test place. And he said, the only problem we're running into is we need somebody on the ground there to oversee it.
Yes, sir.
And I said, David, I'm moving to Louisville. He couldn't believe it. He just could not believe it. And he starts describing what the kind of gifts that he needed. And I said, David, that's what I do. It was like systems, and we need to create a process and a program. I said, that is what I do.
So you walked right into that one, didn't you, girl?
Basically. So he said, well, let me introduce you to Kathy. You need to talk to Kathy before, I make any kind of commitment. And so he gave her my number, and she called me, within a day or two, and we just immediately clicked. I mean, it was just one of those conversations where we were both like, this is it. We're in this together. And we just kind of ran from there.
So I interviewed Kathy a while ago. We talked about reprotection as well.
Mm-hmm.
And what are you, let's rehash what's it all about. What role did you start out in this organization? What role are you doing now? How long have you been with them? What year did you join us?
Yeah, sure. So my original role, it was kind of like building a plane while you're flying it. So we just kind of jumped in and let everyone settle. But the idea was I would pick Kathy's brain and figure out, okay, what did you do in Indiana? And I would turn it into a process or a system and kind of build it out. And so I kind of fell into the role of director of operations because I got the wheels turning and I got the system set up. And I was doing a lot of the analytics part of the cases. Kathy was training me on how to look at cases and figure out what to do. And, I was doing a lot of research. So she was the original CEO, and I was her second hand, basically, of getting the organization off the ground and, making sure everything's above board and really getting the wheels going. And so the idea was, Kathy had shut down 3 abortion facilities in Indiana. The abortionist Ulrich Klopfer for it, thousands of violations she found using open records and client testimonies. And since she was successful there, it had caught the attention of different national pro-life leaders. And they said, I think you're onto something here. And let's test this out. Let's see if this works. And so we started testing it and getting abortion facilities in trouble, using her strategy. Yeah, using open records, using investigative, legal investigative tactics. And my first complaint was against at the time, the only abortion facility at EMW here in Louisville. They had an office manager performing duties that only medical staff could be doing. And she was touting herself as a licensed social worker, and she had no license. And that's illegal. You cannot say that you have a license when you do not. And so we filed a complaint with the Board of Social Work here in Kentucky, and she was sent to cease and desist. And they had to restructure how they were seeing patients. So that was kind of my first taste. And then we just kind of exploded from there. We officially branded as Reprotection Incorporated in January of 2020.
Right. And
people just started flocking to us with cases because we were seeing that, even if a state was passing good pro-life laws, depending on who was at the health department, if they didn't agree with that law, they just didn't enforce it. And so Indiana was a perfect case with Ulrich Klopfer. They had the laws on the books, but the health department just wasn't paying attention. And it took Kathy going in and realizing he's not reporting abortions on minors that are victims of abuse, of child abuse. And she was the one that brought that to their attention, even though the health department had those records. So people just started coming to us, especially sidewalk counselors and pregnancy center directors, the ones on the front lines that are seeing all the ways that the abortion facility, they know what's going on there. If you want to know what's going on in an abortion facility, you talk to sidewalk counselors and you talk to the pregnancy center close by. And so they had all these stories and they had no idea what to do with that information. And so we actually became the official reporting group for Sidewalk Advocates for Life, for Silent No More Awareness. We're working on a partnership with some of the largest pregnancy center networks, because people have this, yes, yeah, everywhere. And the general response has been, we've needed this, because we handle the cases very carefully. We put the well-being of the woman first. And we're never going to put victims of abortion trauma in positions that they are unsafe or they feel unsafe. And so we are creating a trustworthy place for people to bring these violations, and we investigate them and stay on them until we get the answer that we want, which is ultimately to shut them down.
You have your own lawyers.
So we work very closely with Thomas More Society.
Oh, I know. I interviewed that guy too.
Yeah. So we work very closely with them. They have been huge supporters of us from the beginning. They saw what we were doing and they said, this is it. This is good. Because a lot of the people that come to them with these cases, they don't meet medical malpractice, which is what everybody automatically assumes. So you were wronged by a doctor, you need to file a medical malpractice suit. But that standard is so difficult to meet that they can't do anything with these cases. And so now they have a place to send clients that say, yeah, you had a bad experience, but there are avenues that you can go talk to Reprotection. So they help us on cases when we're looking at, legal code and we need some legal research done. They're pretty much a phone call away.
So you had many victories over.
Yeah, we only incorporated 2 years ago.
Right.
And one of the things about this is it takes a long time. These are long, meticulous, and drawn out cases because you're dealing with bureaucracy. And so everything takes a while. Everything takes a while. So our first victory, our first official closure, we've disrupted the operations of a number of facilities, but our first closure was in Florida, September of last year. And that was a direct result of a complaint that we had filed and followed up on, and held the medical board's feet to the fire until they did the right thing. So that was our first closure. And then we consulted on another case recently, just a few weeks ago. We got Planned Parenthood kicked out of off their lease in New York. So they were they had circumvented the planning board process. I won't get into the weeds about it, but basically they had opened a facility illegally. And once that was brought to their attention, the person who owned the building revoked their lease and is kicking them out.
Hey.
So we've had two big ones so far, and a lot of disruptions. So I think we're only going to keep going from here. We have more and more and more people coming to us with stories and needing help. So we're just going to keep going.
So I have two final questions. Where do you see yourself when Roe versus Wade is overturned? Where do you see yourself? You're still going to be helping?
Yeah. Well, what's interesting about the overturning of Roe versus Wade is it doesn't make abortion illegal. It just kicks it back to the states. And since we are already working on a state level in states that have pro-life regulations that are not being enforced, a lot of these states have contingency laws where if Roe is overturned, abortion becomes illegal. But what is the precedent we've seen? Oh, we have these laws on the books, but they're not being enforced. And so we are going to have to work to make sure the states that have regulations on abortion, that it's enforced properly, and you don't have health officials turning a blind eye to somebody doing illegal abortions. So as big of a victory as it is, we will still have a lot of work to do because the state and local governments have not proven themselves to be trustworthy in enforcing abortion regulations.
Yeah.
And so we will still have a lot of work to do until all the facilities are shut down, and we know they're shut down and not practicing anymore.
Finally, how can we volunteer? How can
Mhm.
what encouragement can you give us to volunteer for reprotection?
Reprotection. Yeah. So since we're fairly new, we're growing very quickly. We are looking for people who love to do research or data. I kind of jokingly say, like, calling all pro-life introverts, because it's not you're not out on the sidewalk, talking to people, you're not holding signs, but there's a specific kind of person like me who thinks it's fascinating to read court testimony. Yeah, you understand. Love reading court testimony and legal code and looking things up. So we're building a research team. We have 2 researchers on our staff, but we're always looking for extra hands because we have a lot of information to sort through. The other thing is, if you are a sidewalk counselor or work at a pregnancy center, if you hear the stories, if you know of something that's going on, bring it to us, and we'll look at those cases and see if there's something actionable. Being eyes and ears is really the biggest thing people can do, is find out what's going on and bring it to our attention. And we are also, like, we incorporated right before the world shut down.
Mm-hmm.
And so our programmatic side has grown so quickly, but we've been a little slower growing our support just because of the nature of a global pandemic, and so we're always looking for people to come alongside us, support what we're doing. We're a 501c3, and
nonprofit.
Yes, we're a nonprofit, tax deductible, but we really need people who believe in what we're doing to come alongside of us and support what we're doing so we can keep doing it. So those are the main ways. If I'm talking about this and it piques your interest, you're like, that sounds fascinating. I'd love to connect them with our research team. And if you hear of anything, you can always reach out. Our email is info@reprotection.org. That comes straight to me, and I read every case and review it to see if it's something that we can work on.
Wow, it's a long half hour, and it's chock full of answers and interesting enlightenment, what you are doing and why you're doing it. We love what you're doing. Continue.
Thank you so much.
And if you need me for anything, I like to volunteer for something that I can do here in Portland.
Okay, that's great to know. Kathy speaks so highly of you.
Oh,
she speaks so highly of you. I said, Patty Hunter reached out. She said, we love Patty. I said, I know you do. So she was really excited to hear I was doing this with you.
So this is Patty Hunter, Patty's Page. We'd like to thank Missy Martinez-Stone being my guest for today from Reprotection. Thank you, Missy, for being my special guest. And we love you, and we hope to have you on again. So God bless. May God be with you. See you next week.
Godspeed, my love, until we meet again. You're always in my heart and every dream. Don't let this time apart give in to all our fears. God will keep us close from up above. So until we meet again, Godspeed, my love. God is with us always, for the rest of our lives.